Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is the new police chief for the city of Newport, Seth DiSanto. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Boy, it didn't take you long to bring some action to the community.
No, that was my first full day as chief.
That was August 2nd was
Yes.
your first day? And to the viewers, you might recall that August 2nd was the day that the sheriff cruisers were destroyed by a tractor just up the road from Newport in Derby. Now, were you on that day?
I was.
Right. And did you respond?
I did.
Right.
Yep.
Now, tell me, you weren't born and raised here, but I was, and I have no excuse for this, is I honestly thought the sheriff's department was in Newport and not Derby, because that stretch of road is kind of funny about where did you know that it wasn't, you probably knew that it wasn't in Newport, didn't you?
Yeah, the road's split there.
Right.
The city's on one side, so for example, Agway is in the city of Newport, whereas the opposite side of the road, DeLabrers and the sheriff's department sits in Derby.
Right.
Irregardless of that fact, it didn't really matter what town or city the crime was occurring, we were responding irregardless.
So just say it was a relatively minor crime, shoplifting. You would respond to something like that at, say, Agway, which is in Newport, but what would you do if you got called to, say, DeLabrieres, which is in Derby, directly across the road? How would you go to such a crime?
For a minor violation, it would be handled by the state police,
Right.
which covers the town of Derby. If they request mutual aid assistance, of course, we'll respond.
You know, you really had us all shaking our heads here when you came in. 'Cause we've seen you around, and of course your wife is the much beloved Dr. Rachel DiSanto. You have never drank a cup of coffee?
I have never had a cup of coffee, no.
Is there a life? Is there really life without coffee?
Evidently, I'm quite happy and
And
healthy.
by the way, the
so-
viewers, this is water. This is not coffee. Now, was this an active decision that you've made, or just?
No, it's just something that came along, and I don't know. I've never had one, and don't care to.
Really? That's really fascinating. I didn't know that. To tell you the truth is, if my doctor said, you either don't drink coffee anymore or you're going to have 5 less years of life, I would actually have to seriously contemplate that. So how has it been being the chief? Is it much different than being a patrolman or a sergeant?
Yeah, very much so. I wasn't really sure exactly what to expect when I came in. I mean, I had several long discussions with Chief Duquette to try and prepare myself for what it was going to be like. Obviously, the chief's position is much more administrative.
Right.
It's much more personnel management, even than a sergeant's position. And the political aspect is the thing I'm finding most challenging at this point in time, where one entity or agency will ask for assistance in a form or fashion that the police department isn't really either equipped to provide, or we don't have the personnel to provide, or what have you. So those decisions become kind of tenuous, because as a public servant, I want to be able to provide the services that people want to see, but it's just not always within our realm to be able to do.
Right. Now, when did you join the department?
2005.
Right. And did you know that you wanted to be the chief then?
I knew that my long-term goal was to become a chief of police someday.
Right.
Right at the joining of the Newport City Police Department, I did not have that anticipation.
So when I think of police chiefs, and even Chief Duquette, now retired Chief Duquette, he told me he was in his 40s when he became the police chief, and he said that was really young for a police chief. Well, you're 34 years old.
Right.
Are you the youngest police chief in the state?
I don't know the answer to that question. Just in having contact with other law enforcement agencies, I'd say I'm certainly one of the youngest.
Right. Do you think that's a benefit or a detriment?
Well, I think you can look at it both ways. I personally choose to view it as an asset to me. I'm young, I'm energetic. My family and I have no plans of leaving this area anytime soon, so we're here for the long term. I think in terms of being able to, we have a very young department right now, so being able to manage and kind of coincide with that Y generation becomes much easier for me than someone that would have come in, say, a traditionalist that didn't really deal well with the younger generation.
Now, what is your management style? Because you got to admit is the one thing that this whole tractor incident has created is it's created a lot of discussion. A lot of it's not true, but it has been a discussion about the way the police interacts with the community. What do you expect of your officers?
Our purpose, our goal is to serve the community.
Right.
Therefore, irregardless of what the police department may or may not be able to provide in the nth degree, we are there to listen to the issues and the problems of the citizens and respond accordingly. We cannot solve all problems. We cannot restore order immediately to situations that took years, months, days to deteriorate. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of times people expect the police to show up and immediately restore order to a problem. That's not possible. But what we do try to do is mediate the situation and act accordingly. And if an arrest needs to be made, an arrest is made. If mediation needs to be done, we're certainly capable of doing that.
So how do you expect your officers to communicate with the public? I mean, I don't mean necessarily when they're trying to solve a crime, but I mean just day-to-day life. Just as they go about their duties.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that the people of the city of Newport are going to notice here in the next couple of months is a much higher police presence in the area. So things like increased foot patrol, all marked police cars for higher visibility purposes. You may see more traffic stops in a specified area as we do targeted patrols, things of that nature. But aside from all that, what I want the people to understand and know is that our officers are approachable. And I myself am as guilty, if not any of them, as being walking down Main Street on foot patrol with your hat locked on and a scowl on your face. And that does not portray an approachable person. And so I struggle with that. I want everyone to know that our officers are dedicated and want to provide services to the police department. They're all approachable. They all have their own little niches that they enjoy doing for the law enforcement purpose. But, I mean, we're really just no different than anyone else.
If somebody came up to you and told you the details of a particular crime, can that person do it anonymously? Or if they say they want to do it anonymously, will you ever use their name? Because it seems to me like just talking to some of these people, especially the ones who some people in society have deemed as undesirables, to just talk to them, I would think would be a great way to find out really what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, you would be surprised at the intelligence gathering capability of nothing more than a casual conversation. Right. And I utilize those things on a daily basis, and I have several officers that do the same. If you take the time to sit and listen to people, you can glean so much from them, not only professionally, but personally as well. I mean, I learn from people on a daily basis. So.
And sometimes I bet you learn that some of these people that society looks down upon for, rightly or wrongly, might not be the exact people you thought they were.
Well, no, and that's one of the things in law enforcement that can become a detriment is when you start to draw preconceived notions about a person, or I've heard this name before and I know what they're up to. Each person is individual at every police encounter.
Right.
So if you've had a run-in with law enforcement in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean that the next time will go the same or will be, positive or negative. It all depends on that particular situation in that scenario, and that's what makes this job so multifaceted.
Well, that brings up back to the recent news. There's been a lot of talk on the internet amongst people that people sometimes feel targeted by law enforcement.
Sure.
Do you or any of your officers or any officers you know wake up in the morning, put on your pants, put on your gun belt, and say, I'm going to target this person today?
Yeah, absolutely. We do that every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now that when I wake up in the morning, I know that I am targeting criminal activity.
Right.
Now, what you're asking me is, do I target a specific name?
Right.
And the answer is no.
Right.
But I can tell you right now that I've got officers out on the street targeting drug dealers.
Right.
They are looking for people that are dealing drugs. Or I have an investigator in SIU. She is looking to arrest people that are committing crimes against children. So yes, we do target specific people,
right.
but we do not target names or individuals.
Right. So in other words first of all, I have never gotten a speeding ticket. Some people say, well, how do you not get a speeding ticket? I say, well, I don't speed. Now I have, like all of us, I do, but I do it within reason, and I try not to. But the thing is if I were to get a speeding ticket, would you then wouldn't be saying, let's I know he lives up on Pine Hill and he comes down over Mount Vernon, so let's just set a trap there. You're not going to actually go out of your way to bust me.
Absolutely not. And that, I understand that attitude exists, that thought process exists. I assure you, and anyone else watching, that we are far too busy to take the time to do things like that. Right. Now, if a citizen comes and complains and says, listen, there's a vehicle that drives down Darling Hill every single day, and then he comes into the city, X route, every single day I see him driving 55 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone, then chances are, yes, I'm going to post an officer in that location to try and stop and correct that behavior. But at no time do we have the time or resources to just pick out someone.
Right. So what are the officers doing in the middle of the night? What do they do in the city of Newport? Because when I go down for my first cup of coffee about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I see some of your officers around, what do they have to do in the middle of the night? Everybody sleeps, right?
Most people.
Right.
The criminal entity does not necessarily. But night patrol is somewhat multifaceted in the sense that, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, obviously we have heavier bar traffic and traffic at the eateries. So traffic enforcement and or DUI patrols are one of the things that weigh heavily on night shift. In the hours that you're speaking specifically of, business checks and checking the security of city-owned property is a mainstay of what night shift patrols are doing.
That must be a hard job to stay awake, though, in the middle of the night. I might like to get up early, but I wouldn't want to be one of those night shift people.
Well, I worked nights for many years, and one thing I'll tell you is you do adjust. You get to a point where nighttime is daytime for you, and everyone else may be asleep, but you're wide awake. Now, that can be difficult for some people, but the other thing about this job is that while it may be quiet 1 minute, the next, it could all break loose.
Yeah, especially, like 2 or 3 is when a lot of accidents happen, too. Now, I will tell you, I know some of your long ago retired officers, and I know your former chief very well, and I'm not saying your officers do this today, but some of them will talk about they'd be up to a little no good themselves, kind of humorously. Like one of them tells me about the time that they used to like to flip over a garbage can on top of a skunk, and then the road crew would come the next day and have to flip.
I think I know who you're talking about.
And so I hear all these stories, but that probably isn't. Those are probably stories that maybe are a little embellished and didn't happen very often. You guys don't go around flipping garbage cans on skunks very often.
No, we don't.
Okay, we hear so much there's so much in the news about downtown Newport. Let's be real, there's a lot of empty storefronts right now. And one time I hear in the news, it's because of all the people hanging out. Now it's because of the dogs crapping on the sidewalks. is there really an issue on Main Street, or is it really that bad?
That depends on who you talk to. From my perspective, things are not quite as bad as some people may choose to see things. I choose to try and always look at the positive side of things. Newport's come a long way. Starting from the State Building, working our way up Main Street, essentially that entire side of the street, and with Mill River Furniture moving into the empty landing storefront, I think you're going to see some revitalization there. In terms of loitering, is loitering an issue on Main Street? Yes, it is. But how do you effectively enforce the law for someone that is quote-unquote loitering and someone that is quote-unquote window shopping?
Right.
That is where law enforcement becomes difficult. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have the answer to that yet. I am working on it. And I think with an increased police presence, we can mitigate a lot of those problems.
And the problem is I'm a history writer, and I often find that some of the things that we as a society are addressing today, they've been addressed many other times, some effectively, some not. Like, for example, I remember back when I was in high school in the 1980s, the big problem was loitering. And then I've seen back in the 60s, I have newspaper articles, the big thing was loitering. And it always came down to the point of, what is loitering? What is it? Because the extreme cases of it. Like, for example, one day my daughter was in Goodrich Memorial Library with me. I had to do an interview, and she got such a laugh out of it, but I'm sure the business owners didn't. On the corner of 2nd in Maine, there was a couple guys for about 2 hours hollering at passing cars, "Get a job!" But wait a minute here, that didn't seem, it probably wasn't very good for business, but I just had wondered whether they had considered taking their own advice. So,
I mean, I'm not sure what to say in reference to that specific incident, but there's got to be a more constructive way to spend your time.
Have you guys tried talking to them? Tried to just move them on if you thought that they were just being a little too rowdy, but they weren't breaking any laws?
Sure, absolutely.
And what do they usually say?
Most people are quite compliant with the law. I mean, we're not out there to be the fun police and wreck everyone's good time or infringe on people's rights. But in a scenario that you just gave me, obviously that's not helping out the storefront. It's not really serving any legitimate purpose that I can see. And if anything, it's disrupting the flow of traffic in the sense that people at this intersection are now paying attention to these people as opposed to the road.
Right. And the other factor that you've inherited is all this road construction, bridge construction. Yeah. How do you think that's gone so far?
I think it's gone fairly smoothly. In retrospect, you can look back and say, oh, we could have improved this, or we could have done that differently. I think with the construction company's willingness to do the majority of the work at night has been a huge asset to the city. The bridge project, I don't really think that the traffic influence has been as bad as we initially thought it was going to be. Having said that, there's no way around it. The bridge needed to be replaced. It's going to take as long as it takes to replace the bridge. No one can change that. But I can tell you that I've had conversations with the bridge crew, and they're extremely motivated, and they're doing a real fast job. So
I think, considering the situation, I think it's gone amazingly well. All right, let's go back a bit to the incident back on August 2nd. Is your officers responded to the situation as it came down into Newport. Are you pretty impressed with how your officers dealt with it?
Absolutely. I couldn't be more proud of the way my guys responded. You have a situation like that where obviously a serious crime's been committed.
Right.
And at the time that the call came in, we didn't know if those vehicles were occupied or not.
Right.
So we don't know if anyone's injured. We don't know if anyone's hurt. And we have no idea what the intent of the suspect is at that point. Now, what we were told was the tractor is coming down East Main Street. Well, we weren't told if it was rolling over cars at parking lights We don't know where this guy's headed. We didn't have a whole lot of information to act on at that time. And for Sergeant Rivers and Officer Jacobs and Officer Lancaster to respond in the manner that they did, as quickly and efficiently as they did, and being able to stop and mitigate that situation without anyone being injured, and safely taking the suspect into custody, I have the utmost respect and praise for them.
Here's my thoughts on the matter is, if that's the case, then I think you ought to really recognize them, because I think too often in law enforcement, it's the one, and I'm not saying there's never a time for them to pull their trigger, because there is, but I think too often the people who actually work through a situation such as occurred there, I don't think they're often recognized enough. It's like, for example, one guy I've known all my life, I believe you worked with John Vinan.
Yes.
John Vinan was not one of these officers who shaved his head, went around with black leather gloves, but he had a gift for gab. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that man saved a lot of lives in his career just through talking people through, sure, whether it was a hostage situation or a suicidal person. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if John was ever recognized, whereas if he had done something more dramatic, I think he would have been recognized.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times, and be it in a military situation or law enforcement situation, fire situation or EMS situation, what the general public doesn't realize is those types of incidents occur on a daily basis. Now, obviously, we don't have tractors running over police cars on a daily basis. However, I couldn't even tell you the number of times within the last week that my officers have mitigated a suicidal subject, provided care to someone, and there's again so many facets to this job that people don't recognize. For example, a homeless individual comes to the police department looking for assistance. Mm-hmm. He may be looking for just a dry place to sleep because it's pouring rain, or he may be just looking for some money for some food. If we can provide that assistance, put him in touch with resources and get him, to me, that's a hero. Mm-hmm. That's someone that everyone should look up to. Mm-hmm. That's someone that everyone should aspire to be like. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is what the general public doesn't see on a daily basis. And that's what these guys are out here doing. Now, you do get a particular scenario or situation like we had with this particular incident. First off, do my officers want to be recognized? I don't know. I haven't talked to them directly about it. We've debriefed about the situation. They see it as, Chief, we were just doing our job. And this particular individual needed to be taken into custody, and that's what we did. We did it as safely as possible, and no one got hurt.
Now, you mentioned the word hero. There's some people in society who are saying the person who was driving that tractor is truly a hero. Mm-hmm. When you hear that, how does that make you feel as an officer and as a member of this community? Absolutely
appalled. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. If I called someone that goes down to the Gateway Center and smashes windows with a rock a hero, people would look at me like, why would you think that? This crime is no different. This individual committed vandalism.
Right. Now, why? Why do you think, is there that much disdain for law enforcement in this country that we have to raise a person who probably needs some kind of help of his own, but to raise him up to the level of a hero? How did this come about in this country?
I don't have the answer to that. I'm dumbfounded by it. I really am.
No, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've even talked to officers who said they had to chuckle in a way that somebody would have the audacity to actually pull off such a thing. But the laughing has now stopped. The way the media is creating it, and I do believe the media can create news too, which I'm sure you might even agree with.
I do agree.
Is they make it sound like his actions were widely accepted, that the majority of the people were happy that one department was almost put out of business. What are you hearing on the streets?
I'm hearing the exact opposite.
Right.
Most people are, do not support what happened. They want to see the justice system go through its paces, and in the end,
my worst fear with this whole tractor incident and this whole transforming somebody into a hero who isn't a hero is, what are the young people thinking? Is this, will somebody try to emulate him? Or even worse, there are sick individuals out there who might just try to one-up him so they too can be a hero. Do you think that's a possibility?
Sure, it's a possibility.
Right. Because almost every day now we're starting to see instances where, over in Colorado, then I think it was Arizona, was another recent shooting where people just opened up. And, in a sick mind, and don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the mentally ill, because there's a lot of fine people who have a mental illness, but I'm talking about some really troubled people who might just try to get the attention they want by doing something even worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's a concern. Copycat crimes or crimes of a similar nature are a concern. Anytime you have a major incident that gets a large portion of media attention, we can only deal with those issues as they come about. So hopefully we won't have to deal with anything like that.
And probably some people are going to think I'm being too soft in saying this, but I truly hope that Mr. Peon gets the help he needs, because, to do something that extreme, he has to have some issues that need to be addressed. Because I don't know Roger Peon, but I do know of the Peon family, and they're very good, hard-working people. A lot of them are farmers, and this is not something that I'm sure that they're proud of either. So I truly hope that Roger does get the help that he needs. But that isn't to say that I think he should be called a hero, for sure, because let me put it this way. I've said this before. In my years as a writer, I've interviewed many heroes. Roger is no hero. So do you think this is going to have let's be real. That incident went worldwide. Do you think it's going to have any impact on your job?
Oh, it already has. Just, again, answering questions from the media or looking at policies and procedures that we have in place. How do you stop a tractor? How do you stop a farm tractor from going down the road? Up until that point in time, I'm not sure that we necessarily had a thought process or a plan to react to that. So there's definitely always review and post-incident critique to find out how we did, what we did wrong, what we did right, what we can do better, and just constantly improve.
Have you noticed any less people having less respect for you? Because I look on the internet, and you got to admit, when you're on the internet, people can say, there's a lot of brave people on the internet who are trash talking you guys. Have you had any incidences directly to your face?
Oh, absolutely.
What, since then?
Yeah. Yep. But again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. The one thing that I'd like the viewers to be aware of is, again, we're here to help serve the public. It may not be done in a way that the public necessarily agrees with, but our underlying and overall goal is to make society better, to make society safer, and to have resources for society to use in crisis. No one ever calls the police department to say, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm having a great day, everything's going fine, our family is happy and healthy, and we just wanted you to stop by to see what that looks like. No one does that. And I'm not necessarily looking for people to do that. But what I am looking for people to do is to recognize that we're here to help, not to hinder.
Right. And the other thing is, I often think of one part of your job that I don't care how much money you paid me, I don't want to do. Like, I'm sure you do not look forward to knocking on somebody's door late at night and tell them that they no longer have a son or daughter.
Yeah, that's the difficult part of this job. Again, I'm choosing to look at the more positive aspects of it. There's so many more times that I get to, reunite a lost family member with another one, or deliver a message of good news, or help somebody out of a difficult situation, return stolen property to someone, and to see the reaction of somebody in that particular instance, to feel vilified is really what drives the majority of police officers to do the job that we do.
But on the other hand, when you're faced with so much criticism, do you ever become jaded to where you almost stop functioning the way you used to as an officer and become almost robotic?
That can happen. And I myself have been guilty of that from time to time, where it's just complaint after complaint after complaint, and it doesn't seem like you can do anything right. But the one thing that I keep in the back of my mind, and I try to instill in my officers, is that very next call could be the one that makes all those things go away or trumps those things. There's so many good things that we do that, again, if you're a pessimist and you choose to perseverate on all the bad things or all the complaints or all the negativity, then that will overcome you and you will become robotic. But you also have the ability to focus on the positives and the things that you're doing to benefit the community, or benefiting the individual that you're dealing with, or benefiting the family that you're dealing with, that makes the job worth doing.
Right. And do you plan on making a career of it here?
Without a question.
Right. So that must make you... you must have another 25 years on the job.
Sure.
I know Chief Duquette, this is quite serious. He was actually, as the days neared, he was thinking, boy, you look at that officer, that chief over in New Hampshire, he was, 8 days away from retirement, and he was killed.
Yeah.
And I think Chief Duquette actually had that in the back of his mind, because he knew that, it doesn't happen very often in Vermont, but the police chief that he replaced, within, I'm not sure how long it was before his retirement, he was hitting it. I'm sure you heard about him being hit in the head by a samurai sword. Mm-hmm. So your job actually comes with a bit of danger. It's like the chief and I, the former chief and I, we actually were recognized by the state of Vermont once, because it's a long story, but we recognized the very first police chief of the city of Newport. He was killed in the Newport Hotel, which is where the People's Bank is today. Mm-hmm. And so while Newport is a relatively safe place, it also has a history of being kind of tough on its chiefs too.
Sure. Newport City is no different than New York City, right. San Francisco. We deal with all of the same problems and all of the same crimes on a smaller scale. Right. Doesn't mean it's any less dangerous, doesn't mean it's any less violent. Right. We're thankfully not dealing with it day in and day out like those officers out there have to. I think that those things were probably on the chief's mind as he neared retirement, but I can tell you that at no time did his philosophy or his concern for officer safety waver in those waning days. I personally owe a lot to him for mentoring me to help me and to get to the position I'm in now. What do you say about a guy that served as many years as he did in the several capacities that he did? I mean,
I've known the chief for many years, and he was I remember when I was in junior high. He's a few years older than I was, and he was just a rookie cop, and every once in a while he used to come and roust us at our junior high bus stop, because of course we weren't doing anything. He was just there picking on us.
Sure.
And so I've known him throughout the years, and he will tell you, like any rookie officer, he said at one point he was full of himself, and he says after a while you tone back and you start taking a look at things.
Sure.
And but from what I've seen of you, I think you bring a lot of wisdom for your youthful age.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I think you're going to do a bang up job. I've heard nothing negative about you yet.
Thank you.
I think your officers did I personally, from what I can tell, I think your officers served you well during this last incident.
Without question. Again, I owe to Chief Duquette. I inherited a department full of extremely motivated individuals that love being police officers, want to serve the community. So I'm really there as nothing more than a figurehead. They're the ones out there in the trenches every day doing the work.
So if somebody wants to contact the department or you with a concern, whether it's a criminal concern or just a community concern that relates to law enforcement, or maybe even maybe they have a problem with one of your officers, how can they contact you?
Yep, absolutely. They can contact me via telephone at 334-6733 is our 24-hour line. If they don't want to come in person, I encourage them to come in person. I find personal interaction in today's technological age to be something of a dying breed. And I like to be able to sit down with someone face to face, read their emotions, see their concern. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate over email what someone is trying to convey. So I welcome them to come down to the police department and see me. If they're not comfortable at the department, I have no problem meeting them anywhere. Telephone is certainly an option. We have a Facebook page now that people can check out that has information about what the department's doing, programs that we're doing in the community, resources that are available to people, and
I think your Facebook page was a very welcome addition because my business is on Facebook and it's just a great place. I've noticed, I've even gone to your site. I've seen what's going on, and I think that's just a part of this evolving technology.
Yep, and again, that's part of the personnel management side of what I'm doing, is embracing that technology. So I have a lot of Gen Y guys that are into Facebook and all the technological advances out there. One of the things that the police department just recently instituted is a program called Nixle, which we'll be releasing a press release on here shortly. But people can go to the Newport City Police Department's Facebook page and click on the widget that allows them to link to Nixle. What Nixle allows us to do is to send out real-time press releases and alert notifications to anyone that signs up via text message or email. It's no cost to the citizen. And what that will allow us to do is, for example, if we have an emergency situation where, say, the dam breaks, we can immediately put out an alert to that email and that text message to that cell phone to let somebody know, hey, this is going on right now. And here are the appropriate steps that the police department wants you to take to evacuate or what have you.
Well, that gets me on to another thing then is something when you weren't here yet, when I live in back of the prison. I live in Derby, but the prison's in, and something happened that was really fascinating. I was a reporter at the time of the escape. The two prisoners escaped, and I found it totally fascinating that at that point, no plan had been even put in place for an escape with the local law enforcement. And the interesting thing was, it was kind of like the Titanic. You didn't have all the lifeboats because there was no way it was going to sink. Well, they had no true plan in place with local law enforcement. So when there was an escape, everybody kind of went this way, that way. Do you have a good relationship with the prison? We
have an excellent working relationship. We have done drills in the past, not only us, but the fire department and EMS as well, because the prison is a different entity in the sense that it's not just, okay, we need to get in this door and you go in there. So we have to do things like drill, review policies and procedures. Superintendent Davis from the correctional facility is extremely concerned about public safety, and I actually have a meeting with him later this morning to discuss some issues. So, but we do drill and we do practice for those type of scenarios and incidents. The correctional center has their own notification system to put out to people in the immediate area.
Right. I get that phone call every month or so.
Yep, and they test the system regularly. So there's definitely different facets that go on out there with interdepartmental.
Right. Okay, with only a couple more minutes left, what would you like to tell the viewers? This is your time.
I'd like to just, first of all, extend my gratitude to Chief Duquette for what he's done for me to help me get into this situation, into this position as the police chief. I want the people of the city of Newport to know that the police department is here to assist you. And again, while you may not necessarily agree with the form or facets of which the police department utilizes to enforce law, those things are done for the betterment of society. It is not done to pick on any one individual. It is not done to target any specific citizen. We are trying to make Newport a safer community so that people can enjoy themselves.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.